The Netherlands is one of the richest, safest, and most developed countries in the world. Yet for millions of people, living there has quietly become almost impossible. In just 10 years, the average Dutch home price has risen from around €230,000 to more than €430,000. In cities like Amsterdam and Utrecht, one-bedroom apartments often rent for over €2,000 a month. Social housing waiting lists stretch 10 to 15 years. Homelessness has risen by more than 40% in a decade, and at the same time, wages have barely moved. Over the last 20 years, real earnings increased by just 3 to 5%, while housing prices more than doubled. The country is growing faster than at any point in modern history, adding more than 220,000 new residents in a single year. Yet the supply of homes, infrastructure, and services has not kept up. For a country that built its reputation on planning, stability, and prosperity, this new reality raises a simple but uncomfortable question. How did life become so difficult in a place that appears so successful? Many people think they already know the answer. They blame expats, international students, asylum seekers, or foreign investors. These explanations dominate public debate because they are visible, immediate, and politically charged. But while they influence demand, they did not create the underlying conditions. They accelerated a crisis that was already decades in the making. Beneath the surface is a deeper structural imbalance that has been quietly building for 50 years, one shaped by policy, geography, demography, and a long-term decline in housing affordability. And only now, under the pressure of rapid population growth, economic shocks, and regulatory constraints, has this hidden problem become impossible to ignore. To understand the scale of the problem, we need to zoom out. The Netherlands is one of the most densely populated countries on Earth, with more people per square kilometre than Japan, India, or the United Kingdom. Even small increases in population place immediate pressure on housing, public transport, and land use. But today's growth is not small. In the 1990s, the Netherlands grew by around 60,000 people yearly. Now, after the EU's expansion eastward and several refugee crises, it reached the highest levels ever recorded. More than 220,000 people enter the country per year. The Netherlands is now expanding 3 to 4 times faster than it did a generation ago. This strain is so severe that in 2025, Reuters reported that housing became the #1 election issue, outranking immigration, climate, and healthcare. To put this in perspective, the Netherlands now grows faster per capita than Germany, France, or even the United Kingdom. And while many European countries face housing shortages, the Dutch shortage is one of the most severe relative to population size. Across the EU, the average country builds around 5 new homes per 1,000 residents each year. The Netherlands builds barely 3, despite a construction sector that is far more advanced. Countries with similar land constraints like Denmark or Belgium consistently outbuild the Netherlands. Meanwhile, Dutch households carry one of the highest mortgage debt levels in the world, over 100% of GDP, leaving families more financially exposed than their neighbours. And while the Netherlands is often praised for its planning system, that system now struggles to adapt. Cities like Stockholm, Vienna, and Helsinki have streamlined building processes to increase supply. Meanwhile, Dutch permitting times have increased, not decreased, over the past 20 years. In a global comparison, the Netherlands is no longer keeping pace with its peers. This rapid growth interacts with a housing market that was already stretched to its limits. In Amsterdam, the average home now costs more than €530,000. A small studio of 20 square metres can exceed €1,500 per month. In Utrecht, rising demand has turned the city into one of Europe's least affordable markets. Eindhoven continues to grow on the strength of companies like ASML, yet the construction of new homes lags far behind job creation. In Groningen, students compete for a shrinking supply of rooms, forcing some to sleep in gyms or travel long distances to attend classes. Across the most densely populated area of the Netherlands, rising prices push families into satellite towns, lengthening commutes and straining public transport. This is not a series of isolated events. It is a nationwide shortage that affects nearly every region and every demographic group. For many Dutch residents, these numbers translate into daily struggles. It's not uncommon for a student to send out more than 200 housing applications and receive no response at all. Some sleep in temporary hostels for months while searching for a permanent room. 2 teachers with full-time jobs can still fail to qualify for a mortgage on even the smallest apartment. Even highly skilled workers employed at major technology firms report commuting more than 90 minutes each way because rental homes near their workplace are simply unavailable. These are not isolated stories. They reflect a reality felt across the country. The housing crisis is no longer about statistics or market trends. It is about people whose lives are being rearranged around scarcity. So the question becomes, why can't the Netherlands build enough homes? The answer lies in decisions made decades ago. In the 1970s, the Netherlands built between 120,000 and 150,000 new homes every year. Back then, demand was lower, the population was smaller, and land was more readily available. But over time, strict zoning laws, protected green spaces, and complex planning regulations limited how and where cities could expand. Municipalities controlled land release, slowing development and increasing costs. All these factors resulted in the fact that the Netherlands hardly achieved to build 70,000 new homes per year, making the deficit higher every year. The Netherlands also built one of the largest social housing systems in the world. In 1980, around 45% of all homes were owned by housing corporations. Today, that share has fallen to around 28%. Waiting lists that once lasted just a few months now stretch beyond a decade in many cities. Affordability has shifted dramatically across generations. In the 1970s, a typical Dutch home cost just 4 to 5 times the average annual income. Today, it is 11 to 12 times the median salary, more than double the burden faced by previous generations. At the same time, wages stagnated. Between 2000 and 2020, real incomes grew only 3 to 5%, while housing prices rose more than 120%. The gap between what people earn and what homes cost has widened every single decade. A home that once required 1 salary now often requires 2. A starter home that was once accessible at age 25 is now out of reach for many even at age 35. These structural weaknesses were visible long before today's crisis. Social housing corporations struggled with financial pressure and new taxes. Student housing demand surged without matching supply. Mortgage tax incentives encouraged borrowing, inflating prices over decades. Even before recent population growth, the Netherlands was not building enough. The warning signs were there, but stable economic conditions concealed how fragile the system had become. Then came the acceleration events. In 2019, Reuters reported that EU nitrogen rules threatened to shut down tens of thousands of construction projects as courts ordered emissions to be reduced. In the same year, another Reuters report highlighted that over 30,000 housing and infrastructure projects were halted or delayed almost overnight. Although the environmental issues had been building for decades, the ruling created immediate shockwaves. New housing developments stalled. Public infrastructure projects paused. Planning became more complex and unpredictable. At the same time, interest rates fell to historic lows. In the 1990s, Dutch mortgages were typically between 6 and 8%. In the 2000s, they ranged from 4 to 5%. But between 2012 and 2021, they dropped to just 1 to 2%. With borrowing suddenly cheaper, buyers could afford larger loans, pushing prices upward at a pace the housing supply could not match. According to real estate firm Colliers, the nitrogen ruling alone caused the Netherlands to miss out on roughly 23,000 homes that otherwise would have been built. This loss compounds every following year, widening a gap that was already decades deep. The pandemic intensified the pressure. Remote work increased demand for larger homes and more space. People began searching for houses in smaller towns, spreading the crisis beyond major cities. And then, population growth surged to record levels. With more than 220,000 new residents arriving in a single year, demand flooded the market faster than construction could respond. A structural shortage turned into a widespread affordability crisis. This is where the feedback loops begin. A shortage of homes pushes prices higher, which attracts investors, reducing the stock of affordable starter homes. With fewer entry-level homes available, more people are pushed into the rental market. Rising rents increase demand for social housing, which is already overburdened by a shrinking supply and long waiting lists. At the same time, rapid population growth intensifies political pressure, leading to more restrictive policies that can slow construction further, and the nitrogen limits create delays that ripple across the entire building sector. Each loop reinforces the next, making the system harder to unwind. The numbers paint a clear picture. The Netherlands needs at least 100,000 to 120,000 new homes each year just to stabilise the market. Instead, it is building around 70,000. More than 40% of young adults still live with their parents because they cannot find or afford a home. Teachers, nurses, and police officers often cannot live in the communities they serve. Students in places like Groningen, Delft, and Amsterdam face housing lotteries with hundreds of applicants for a single room. Families look across the border to Belgium or Germany in search of affordable homes. Many Dutch cities now see more commuters from abroad than ever before, simply because housing stops at the national boundary, while jobs do not. For companies, the shortage is becoming a serious economic challenge. Reuters reporting shows Dutch economic growth stalling around 0.6%. With government finances deteriorating, conditions that make large-scale public housing investment even harder. Businesses in technology, healthcare, and education struggle to attract workers when those workers cannot find a place to live. Infrastructure systems strain under increased demand. Public services face rising pressure. And for ordinary households, the effects are deeply personal. A generation that expected to follow the same path as their parents, study, work, buy a home, build stability, is discovering that the foundation has shifted. Midway through this crisis, there is a twist that complicates the narrative. Despite record population growth and soaring prices, the Netherlands is building more homes than many other European countries on a per capita basis. And yet the shortage keeps intensifying. This reveals a deeper structural issue. Demand is rising faster than any realistic level of construction can accommodate. Even doubling today's building rate would only slowly close the gap that has been widening for decades. The crisis is not simply a matter of building too little. It is the result of long-term underbuilding intersecting with the fastest population growth the country has ever seen. This creates a fundamental question about the future. What happens when the next generation cannot secure independent housing? What happens when essential workers cannot live near their jobs? What happens when students spend years competing for a single room? A housing market is more than a financial system. It is the basis for family formation, stability, productivity, and long-term economic health. When that system breaks, the effects ripple through every part of society. The Netherlands has the resources, talent, and institutional strength to address these challenges. But the underlying issues, structural scarcity, rising demand, regulatory complexity, and declining affordability will not disappear quickly. They are the product of decades of slow-moving trends that now converge at a moment of unprecedented growth. The next decade will determine whether the country can restore balance to its housing system, or whether the pressures will continue to intensify. Living in the Netherlands has not become impossible overnight. It happened gradually, shaped by policies and pressures that were invisible to most people. But today the consequences are clear. The gap between supply and demand continues to widen. Homes remain out of reach, and the foundation that once supported stable, predictable growth is under strain. The question now is whether the Netherlands can reverse this trajectory before it becomes irreversible. The window to act is still open, but it is narrowing.